So the crane section starts with some weird movements that, to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure what they're for. These movements here. And I'll tag them right here. You let me know what you think. I have no idea what these movements are for. My Sifu has no idea what these movements are for. We've all heard some idea, oh, somebody throws a kick, you're going under and doing this and yada yada yada. I can't think of anything that I would use it for or how I would change it to make it be more functional because it's an odd movement, to be real with you. So we're going to move on from that one. Next is the buckets. I always change my buckets. For those of you that don't know, I don't know if everybody calls it this, but we call it water buckets because the way they like hold the buckets this way, the buckets of water this way, like literally. So we typically swing. I change it to just a reverse punch, so I'll treat it as block punch. I just think that works better. The concept behind the bucket is that you're gonna block, push somebody's arm down, and go like up in here to like dislocate the shoulder, I believe is the rationale behind that. I just don't feel like you'd have the time to do it. It's not impossible. I just don't think that it's worth developing when this is so much more likely to work. At the same time, we do this all the time, so you can pick your poison on that front. The rest is pretty straightforward. Turning to the side to throw a punch, is teaching you to turn your waist to incorporate power into your strike, and it could also double as that same kind of takedown from that tiger section. This is just, either a block or a strike this way, which would be like a strike to here, however you want to do that. Now the actual crane beak movement, and just a double back. Those long fist, long range type movements, they're considered crane because of the crane's wings. There's more a little bit after the crane beak section, and those movements are takedowns. We'll get to them in a second. But just so that, it doesn't sound like I'm talking about movements that aren't relative to that section. They are crane movements, they're just not crane looking on the surface. Moving on, the crane beak section. Now, in my branch, we use the wing, which is like this, versus this one, which is like just poking or plucking, however you want to word it. So we're here. This is for redirecting, and it's not like an actual catch. I'm not grabbing onto it or anything. Something comes in, I'm just rerouting. And it's the same move. It's literally the same movement as this in the tiger section, just faster and less committed. The tiger section is the grab, so you're committed to that grab because you're holding on to somebody. You're not just gonna grab somebody for shits and giggles and let go. Here, you're rerouting, so if they pull back, you're not committed. You can just stop and transition into something else from there. So you reroute what's incoming, and then pluck at the eyeball or the ear. I would personally go straight for the eyeball. The reason that we use the crane wing versus the crane beak is because these double as feelers. And what that means is that when I've established contact, I want to be able to feel your movement. If you're pulling back, I can feel if you're pulling back. If you're turning, I can feel the pressure of which way your arm is moving relative to how you're turning. And that's a lot of development and sensitivity training for that to actually work. And Wing Chun guys do it all the time with their Chi Sao. Tai Chi people do it with push hands. We also have a form of sticky hands. I've seen Southern Praying Mantis have a form of sticky hands. So there's a lot of different ways to practice building sensitivity in that close quarter kind of sense without being bombarded in sparring or anything like that. So you can look that up or ask your teacher if they have anything like that so you can develop those skills. Personally, I never got too good at push hands in Tai Chi, or I learned the format for the Chi Sao in Wing Chun. I never really used it though, so I don't really know much about that. But for the Hung Gar stuff, I learned how to do it. I learned how to teach it. I learned how to practice it, and it's good stuff. It's definitely, at least the way my Sifu did it, was very much real and more like a less traditional kung fu looking and more clinch range, close quarter striking and grappling. And it was intense. It's not very. It doesn't have to be soft in like a Tai Chi sense where it's just like touching and feeling and rerouting. It can get very intense. It does include power. It does include a lot of things that are necessary as you build so that you can develop the skill set to, well, so you can learn how to handle live resistance, really, and so that you can learn when and when not to be soft and use power. And it's cool stuff. I think it's super valuable, and that was one of the main ways I learned to use my techniques and learn what works and what doesn't work for me. So I recommend you all try that yourselves. Back to the movement. So we use this to redirect and this to strike. And now you'll notice I use both hands. That's not the way that I was taught to. That's just my own personal preference. Because I feel like this does work better as a strike. Because this is a strike, you know, we call it a pluck, but it's a strike. It's not a power heavy strike. It's not going to do significant damage if I miss. But if I do hit my intended targets, it's going to do what it's intended to do, which is cause damage that's awkward and makes the person super uncomfortable. I was also told that this way is arguably better because the unevenness of our fingers, this finger is more likely to be direct versus here, where all of this is making contact. So you have the same amount of force in a smaller surface area. Pick your battles. I know sometimes I catch myself doing it this way, so I don't know what would come out in a realistic situation, but there's a lot of concept to play with there. So this section, and then the kicks. So this movement, when you see anytime a kung fu form has like this like hook downward, that's just catching a kick. There's nothing too special about that. You can also look at it as redirecting a punch, but you're not going to go down, right? A punch comes in, it's going to look like this before the crane technique. So something comes in, you can just hook it, move it out the way, and then do the next thing. So that move would just be hook and kick to the nuts. And this one here. That movement is a little bit weird because you're kicking and then you're like cleaning your foot and then plucking down. The way that I look at it is if you throw the kick and somebody catches it, you know, and they're at a close enough range, and this is like same side in the way that I'm envisioning it, and it's very hard to the struggle of not having someone to record with. Anyhow, it's not that like I'm kicking and they're a mile away just holding my foot with their hook. No, this is like I kick, they're trying to come in with something, they have my foot, and I'm gonna clean it off and then move in with the strike. It doesn't have to be the strike specifically. Another way to look at it is like, and it's never going to be used like with that long front stance and like plucking down and being real pretty about it. But if I take someone to the ground and I'm going to do what I need to do, what it's teaching me to do is just move their hand out of the way. And it's like a teaching tool for some ground fighting. And not ground fighting in like arm bars and stuff. It's really just like, if you're going to ground and pound somebody, just make sure you move their arm out the way so that they don't clock you first, and then do what you need to do. And then another interpretation is if you drop someone to the ground and they start kicking at you, I just find this interpretation really funny. They start kicking at you while they're on the ground, move a leg out the way, and pluck their nads. So we've covered a bulk of the crane section. I think these moves are pretty obvious, just block, strike, block, strike. The Phoenix Eye is similar in concept to this in that you're striking with a small surface area, so it's like the same amount of force in a more condensed area, which hurts more. The target area for the Phoenix Eye would be like right here, or the eye. Then comes the fun stuff, right? All the long fist stuff. You'll see trips and sweeps, and I'm gonna pair this with some videos from people doing these techniques, even though they don't know the form or the style, because it goes to show you that even though people don't recognize it, it's there in the form. You just have to be able to pluck it apart, and the likelihood of you being able to use something like this is so much higher when you drill it into your brain consistently. And every time you practice this form, every time you look at these movements, you're saying, ah, yes, I know what I'm doing. And you're visualizing it, right? You're coming in, you're pulling, and you're tripping over your leg. You know, however you want to look at it. That's, especially when you've done it with somebody before, so you can say, ah, yes, I've done this with somebody in a sparring context or in a drill. And now when I practice the form, I can visualize it. And that's the bulk of that. And that's more or less the entirety of that crane section. Yeah. The rest of it is repetition. You have a lot of those same moves in Gungji. So it's all super important stuff. I'm sure we'll get to it at a later time, but this is Tiger and Crane, so I wanted to cover the Tiger and Crane part in detail. Alright, y'all, so that was the crane video. I think we're going to cap there on that, and we'll move on to something different next week. I have not yet decided what that's going to be. I'm hoping my brain can come up with something that's outside of the Hung Gar spectrum, because that's what we covered all of November. And we'll take it from there. I might do a weapon video, I might do a completely different style, I might even analyze a style, I don't know. So if you have any ideas, suggestions, anything, drop a link down below and let me know. You all take care. I hope you enjoyed. See you next week.